Monday night introduction to U.S. government or Civics 101. We'll wait just a couple of minutes to see how many people join us. I'm showing 3. All right, that's good. Hello, Diana, too. Hello, South Florida DCL. Welcome. Tonight, we're going to talk about 2 of my favorite amendments, and so I'm kind of excited about that. I think both of them should be repealed, but we'll get into that. Hopefully, everybody's safe. Of course, let me check the map here just real quick. I've got my ERCOT map up here. That's the Electrical Reliability Council of Texas, and power outages. So we've just found out that the area directly across the highway from us is without power. And so let me see how many people are affected here on the ERCOT map. Atlanta, Burnett, Williamson County. Come on, Williamson County, where are you? It should be right there, yeah. So 246 houses affected directly across the highway are without power. So let's hope it doesn't spread. Let's hope that we keep it here, keep it contained, and they get their power back very quickly. For those of you who have not heard, evidently earlier today, hello, Scott Hummer, Celtic Grandma Sue Me. Gosh, and there were some fantastic comments on the 2 videos that I put out today. Seeing Sue Me and Little Lone Prepper, I just think great additions, great thoughts. Thank you for your comments. Hello, Theoxerus. If you get a chance to see those videos, take a look at the comments. There are some fantastic additions. Really, really appreciate you guys adding your thoughts and your great comments. That's always so valuable. Don't know if you're up on it, but it appears that the Iranian Republican Guards, the IRG, has launched 6 ballistic missiles and at the U.S. consulate in Erbil, which is northern Iraq. And so basically it's an act of war against the U.S. I have a feeling, hello, Sandy Aarons, welcome. I have a feeling that they're thinking that, the last time we had a Democrat president, Jimmy Carter, back in 1979, I think it was right after Thanksgiving. If I remember correctly, I was at Field Station Augsburg in Augsburg, Germany, right next to Munich. And man, did we go on alert like you would not believe. But anyhow, that's when the Iranian Revolution happened. It threw out the Shah, and then they took over our embassy and took all those diplomats hostage, and they were hostage for over a year. They stayed hostage until I believe it was Ronald Reagan was sworn in. January 1981. So well over a year. They kept something like 300 of our diplomats and everything hostage. It may have been, I'm not going to give a number. Take back that 300. It was over 300 days. It may have been 180 something. But anyhow, there were 6 short-range, intermediate-range ballistic missiles that were launched from Iran, from the territory of Iran, at the U.S. consulate in Iraq. And they said that was because it's an area of subterfuge, that we are causing them problems by being there. So be prepared. It could be considered an act of war. Thank you, Sandy. 444 days. It could be considered an act of war. So it's going to be interesting how things turn out. We also had more attacks by the Houthis on civilian shipping. You would think after 4 days of bombing that they would get the message, but evidently they haven't. It also appears that the area directly across from Yemen, in the Horn of Africa there, if you will, which is Somalia, Ethiopia, that area, it looks like they're having some revolutions and some fighting going on in there as well. So we're going to have problems on both sides of that strait going into the Red Sea. So make sure you're well prepped. there could be a possibility of, if this goes the way that I think it's going to go, that there's going to be a whole bunch of panic buying. And I don't know, I went to Walmart Saturday. I have my Saturday routine. At 6 o'clock, we have our ham radio club meeting. And then about 7:30, I'll head out to Walmart. And then from Walmart, I go to the farmer's market. I go to 2 different farmer's markets, and I'll stop by Academy or Bass Pro Shop and, just do my Saturday morning prepping type of a thing. And just out of curiosity, I checked on butane and all the different camp stoves and camping stove fuel and everything else. That was already all sold out Saturday morning. Oh, by the way, it's 18 degrees here right now. So that's the reason why. So all of the camp stoves, hand warmers, everything was sold out. I found more hand warmers at Academy, but they were all back in the hunting supplies. They weren't up front where people would normally look for them. So I was surprised that was there. They also had sold out of all their stuff. And I was lucky to get the 2 gallons of paraffin, liquid paraffin for my lantern. People weren't into buying that. So just really, really weird how things are going. So panic buying, be cautious of that. If once this hits the news, then just be aware that people are going to be panic buying. So get out there early, get what you need, regardless of the weather conditions. Just be safe. And then once the panic starts, you stay inside, stay away from it. Okay, we've got 13 people on, so let's go ahead and start what we're here for, which is U.S. government and civics, and we're talking about the 16th through the 20th Amendments tonight. So 2 of those are 2 of the ones that I just really like talking about. Remember, our Constitution limits the authority of our government. It does not limit the citizens' authority. It limits the government's authority. So theoretically, Congress is only allowed, well, I'm not a ham yet. I haven't taken the test, glass to mouth. So I'm with them. And so I'm going to do both technician and general tests in 2 months in March. And, I didn't do it earlier. I'm a signals intelligence guy. So I've been on the receiving end of all that, and that radio theory and everything else. When I was a Boy Scout for Eagle Scout, I did semaphore instead of Morse code. There used to be a requirement that you knew Morse code. You could copy, I think it was 20 groups per minute. And that kind of intimidated me. So I didn't get my license. But now I just want to get it. And I want to get the general so that I can get into the 20 meter band and down around, from that 3 to 30 megahertz, I think, is going to be the sweet spot for hams. So, but anyhow, let me see. Oh, by the way, welcome. I haven't seen you here before. So thank you for joining us. I greatly appreciate it. So let's talk about the 16th Amendment, which is the only amendment that gives additional power to Congress. So everything Congress is allowed to do is in Article 1, Section 8, and the 16th Amendment. So what is the 16th Amendment? Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration. This was passed in 1870. So it's the income tax amendment. So up until that time, they did not have an income tax. And so then they came out with the income tax. Notice it doesn't say it has to be progressive, regressive, flat rate. It doesn't say anything. It just says Congress has the authority to collect taxes on your income. So everything else in the income tax code is actually supposed to be passed by Congress. But what we see happening, as usual in our government, is they don't want to get involved that much. So what they do is they create an agency, the Internal Revenue Service, make that subordinate to the president, and then give all that authority to the executive office for the rulemaking that goes into the enforcement of the IRS codes. Now, what they will do is every once in a while, they may change, the rates, or they'll come up with something like the Roth or the 401k plans for deferment and things like that. But pretty much, I'm going to say more than 50% of the rules and everything else that are passed concerning income tax nowadays is actually passed as a rule, not as a law, but as a rule under the IRS rulemaking authority that Congress gave them, and that's an executive branch thing. So, that's one of those things that we've given them a little bit more power on. I would like to see that power restricted, so that Congress has to pass everything that has to do with income tax, and that they retain that authority so that the president and the IRS doesn't have the authority to make those rules. So another one, and this one I think needs to be repealed, to be totally honest with you. Amendment 17, and it was passed in 1913. So just before World War II. And it says, the Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof, for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualification requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislatures. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority in each state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments until the people fill the vacancies by election, as the legislature may direct. This amendment shall not be construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes valid as part of the Constitution. So if we take a look at how the Constitution was originally designed, okay, we had a bicameral system. We had a House of Representatives. And who does the House of Representatives represent? The people. And remember that we had 13 states, and those states were considered pretty much sovereign. So when it came to the Civil War, remember people like General Lee. General Lee was offered to be the commandant or the general in charge of the northern armies, but his loyalty was first to his state, then to the United States. So he went with Virginia, and he became the commander of the Army of Virginia. So up until the War of Northern Aggression, that's pretty much the way it was. Everybody was more loyal to their state than they were to the collection of states. And so the states had their state legislatures appointed their senators. So that's what gave us the 9th Amendment, okay, the right of the people, and they are represented by the House of Representatives. Then the 10th Amendment gave power that was not enumerated in the Constitution in Article 1, Section 8 to the states, okay? So those states' rights were represented by the senators. Well, the 17th Amendment did away with states' rights and states' representation as far as the senators. So, that's the 10th Amendment was basically eroded by the 17th Amendment because those senators no longer represent the states, they represent the citizens of the states. So it's just a fancier House of Representatives now, instead of representing the legislatures of the states of which they belong. So it really messed things up. Let's catch up with the Canadian Income Tax 1917, originally presented as a temporary wartime measure. The Income Tax War Tax Act of 1917 was viewed as a controversial measure at that time. Yes, it was considered a controversial measure in the U.S. as well. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at everything that happened, basically the Great Depression, we had a miniature depression right at the end of World War I. And then we had a Great Depression from 1923. Basically, really 1929 is when it started, and it went all the way up until World War II. I'm sorry, but my legs are just itching. Everything's dry because of the heat from the heaters running so much. And Shenanigans, hello, welcome. But so from 1929 until 1940 was the Great Depression. And so the same thing there. We see a lot of things happening, especially the U.S. going off the gold standard, the Gold Confiscation Act, the empowerment of the labor unions, the Civil Works Administration, CWA, and they did some good. They built like the Highland Lakes. The dams were built by CWA. A lot of the roads, airports, laying power poles. Remember in 1933, we also had the Rural Electrification Program, the REA, Rural Electrification Act, which allowed cooperatives, electric cooperatives, to form, to put power out into the farm areas, into the rural areas. Up until that time, the vast majority, over 95% of all the electrification of the U.S. was inside the urban areas, inside the cities. So the REA kind of expanded that out into the rural areas in 1933. So a lot of things were happening right then, we were seeing a lot of this was the Socialist and Communist Party USA. They were kind of having seen the success that the Bolsheviks had in the 1917 revolution in Russia, changing the Russia over to the Soviet Union. They were hoping to do the same thing here in the U.S. So we see a lot of, they were trying to do the same thing in Germany, which is why the beer hall push, the Nazis, the National Socialists, basically were fighting against the communists. And that's what gave the mustache guy, most of his authority was fighting against the communists in Germany. And that was a very good excuse for him to assume power. One of the things we see, and it's happening in the US right now, and then, what's his name? Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. One of the things he talks about is causing chaos, because when people have chaos, they want something solid, and they're even willing to accept tyranny as long as it protects them from the chaos. So what we see is things like Antifa and BLM causing chaos so that we can say, oh, do away with the police. And when you do away with the police, then you have even more chaos. And so now you say, we need a solution to all the crime, all this turmoil, all this chaos. And so then you're willing to accept tyranny just as safety to get away from all the tyranny and all of the chaos and stuff that's going on. So, we see a lot of the stuff that we talked about under the 1917 with the Bolsheviks, the beer hall push, early Communist Party in the U.S., of which I think Franklin Delano Roosevelt was a socialist at heart. I mean, most of the programs he brought in were very socialistic. So that's part of this era here, from 1919 up until 1940. Okay, the 18th Amendment, and this is also in 1919. So this is World War I era. After 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within, the importation thereof into, or the exportation thereof from the United States and all territory subject to the jurisdiction thereof for beverage purposes is hereby prohibited. Section 2. The Congress in the several states shall have concurrent power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Section 3. This article shall be inoperative until it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of the several states, as provided in the Constitution, within 7 years from the date of submission herein to the states by the Congress. So this amendment, the 18th Amendment, prohibition, was ratified on January 16th, 1919. So just think, tomorrow's the anniversary of the ratification of prohibition. So tomorrow also happens to be my 40th wedding anniversary. So if I'm a minute or two late for the live tomorrow night, it's because we're going out to dinner at 6 o'clock to celebrate our 40th anniversary. So, okay, let's see where we are. Let me see. Ooh, Sumi says something, Celtic Grandma said something I need to catch up on. Where's my mouse? There it is. So I have a remote mouse, and so it gets lost sometimes. And on this wooden table, it also doesn't do that good a job of finding stuff. Let me see. Breaking news, Trump won the Republican Iowa caucuses. Oh, okay. Yeah, I agree with Little Lone Prepper, was it? No, Sumi, not surprised. Yeah, I'm not surprised either. Sumi says tyranny is never a solution. Absolutely. Yes. And so the Rural Electrification Act was the same thing as passed simultaneous with the Tennessee Valley Authority. And there were actually two different rural power generation sources that started at the same time. So under that bill that created the TVA, remember that this is in the middle of the Depression, 1933. So they only funded the TVA. They also created another organization called the LCRA, the Lower Colorado River Authority, and that was building 7 highland lakes and dams along the Colorado River in Texas. And so because the federal government couldn't do both, Texas said, we will co-fund the LCRA, will cooperate, co-own with the federal government. So that's the only co-owned system in the U.S. The TVA is owned by the federal government. LCRA is a 50-50 federal government, U.S. Our state government. So they have their own entity here in Texas, the LCRA. They provide a great amount of power to the Pedernales Electric Co-op. And Pedernales Electric Co-op is the one that was founded by LBJ. So it's the largest electric co-op in the U.S. Just northeast of us here is Burnett Electric Co-op, and that was the very first electric co-op in the U.S. I used to be the HR director for what was originally McLennan County Electric Co-op, and that's Waco. And then they merged with Rosedale. And so now they have 7 counties that they have responsibility for. It's called the Heart of Texas Electric Co-op. So all this rural electrification stuff, is near and dear to my heart because that's the area that I worked in for, 15 years. Okay, let me see here. Thank you all for your good wishes. I appreciate that. Oh, wow. Holly says that they're getting their first snow. I saw, I can't remember when it was. I think it might have been last Thursday, Friday, maybe Saturday. My daughter sent me a video of my grandsons outside trying to make snowmen because they're in the Bud Lake area. And evidently they had their first snowfall earlier this weekend, late the weekend. So Churn Farm says that they were not far behind Burnett. Yeah, probably more than likely. I know that there were an awful lot here in Texas. Oh no, Feoxerus, I did not see that. I would love to see that. Now, there's another thing going on here in Texas right now that you all need to be aware of, because if you're not a Texan, you probably are not aware of it. When Texas rejoined the Union in 1865, there was a provision that we could maintain our own military force. So we have, under the Texas Military Department, the Texas State Guard, not the Texas National Guard. We have the 39th Infantry Division, which is the Texas National Guard. That used to be the 49th Armored Division, and just redesignated that here, in the last 10, 20 years, from the 49th Armored to the 39th Infantry. And so it's a blue shield with a T in it for Texas. It's a historical unit. But anyhow, that's the Texas National Guard. So the president can call them up for to activate them to go to war, whatever. And the governor can use them when they're not being called up by the federal government for things that are located, hurricanes, things like that. We have our own Texas State Guard, same uniforms, same training, same MOSs. Everything is exactly the same. We have 4 brigades. And I was in the 519th MP company in El Paso. So we received military police. And at that time, this was the late 60s, early 70s. We were actually mostly riot control because this was a lot of anti-war sentiment back in the late 60s and early 70s. So Texas does have its own state guard, and that is the guard that has been deployed down to, I believe it's Del Rio. It might be another city, but they have sent a battalion down, and they've taken over a state park that basically the feds, the DEA, not DEA, ICE or Border Patrol was allowing people in through that area into the U.S. And so basically the governor said, no, this is state property, you get out. And the Texas Guard is actually enforcing that and keeping ICE from being in that area, so that they are forcing any illegals who come across back into Mexico. And that's the Texas State Guard that is doing that. Theoxer says he'd hate to see the State Guard pitted against the National Guard of the feds. Yeah, same, but same pay scales, everything's the same. As a matter of fact, my ROTC commander, instructor when I was in high school, Major Gonzalez, he was the battalion commander for the MP battalion in El Paso. And that's part of the reason why when I went to college, I enlisted, was to be with him. I thought it would also get me a draft deferment. Boy, was I wrong. But anyhow, Eagle Pass. Thank you, Scott. Eagle Pass. Yeah, he's going to continue. He's going to continue. That's no problem. No problem whatsoever. So let's go back to let me see if I've caught up. Yes, they are. And the whole reason is because the thought process is that if they grant them citizenship, they're going to be so happy that they're going to vote for the Democrats, and the Democrats will be a one-party country for the rest of the time because of these I'm going to say 20 million, 22 million illegals who have come across that may be granted citizenship at some point. So just think of how that in a split country that's 45-45 and then 10% in the middle. Just think how that level of votes for any one party would basically decapitate the other party, and we'd become a single party country. So that's it. And I think that's part of the reason why they're doing what they're doing. Prohibition, the 18th Amendment. What's really neat about this amendment, it is the only amendment to ever be repealed. So basically from 1933 up until the mid-30s, I'm sorry, from 1919 up until 1933, the 18th Amendment. So for about 14 years, it was illegal to have any alcohol production, consumption, sales, distribution, and all that kinds of stuff. And I'm reading a book right now that was recommended by Maggie Boyle, and you might see her here on the in the chat every once in a while. But it's Mr. Roth's autobiography of his life during the Depression, and the number of people who went bankrupt in 1919 as a result of they put all their money into a bar and everything else, and the feds just came and took everything they had and threw it in the streets. So it's something else. Scott, Yes, Liberty Hill, which is just west of us. So you've got Round Rock, and then northeast is Georgetown. Then northwest is Cedar Park and Liberty Hill. So Liberty Hill is further north than Cedar Park, and Liberty Hill got snow today as well. We didn't get anything. They say that we might get freezing rain starting at 10 o'clock this evening. We'll see. Well, and the ironic thing is that those Hispanics who traditionally have voted Democrat are turning against the Democrats because of the illegal mass migration that's going on. So, the people they had basically shooed in are turning against them because of them trying to get more votes that way. So, it's strange how it's working out. It's a mess up, a total mess up. Correct. So if they are granted the right to vote, he will. There's nothing we can do to stop them from federal elections, which would be House of Representatives, President, Vice President, and the Senate. But he can restrict them from voting inside the U.S. Or I'm sorry, inside Texas. So yes, that would be it. So anyhow, so prohibition just kind of exacerbated it. Made the whole Depression era worse from 1919 on. Remember that we had that mini depression, and then we had the strikes by the military, the veterans, who were promised money for their foreign service and going to war when they came back and they weren't paid it. So we had a whole bunch of different little things going on. We loaned all kinds of money. See if this doesn't sound familiar. We loaned all kinds of money to foreign countries. We didn't want to get involved in the war, right? But we were going to loan equipment. We loaned money. We loaned everything else to all of our allies until we got involved in the war. And then they didn't want to pay it back. And so, we went off the gold standard. There was just inflation like you would not believe. As a matter of fact, if you read L. Frank Baum's book, not the movie, but the book, The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is during this time frame of the Great Depression. And the whole thing is the yellow brick road going towards Oz. Oz is basically Washington, D.C. The yellow brick road is the gold standard. In the book, we also had silver coinage, if you'll remember, the silver dollar, the 90% silver Mercury dimes, and the Franklin half dollars and everything else. So all of our coinage was 90% silver. So Dorothy's shoes in the book are silver, representing the silver coins and the gold back dollar bills going towards the White House. Then we have the three characters that she encounters. The Cowardly Lion is Jennings Bryant, and he was considered the lion of the Senate, and he couldn't do anything to stop Roosevelt. And then you had the Scarecrow, and the Scarecrow was getting rusty and everything else. Well, that was the northern manufacturing area, the Rust Belt, if you will. And then and then the heartless, the brainless Scarecrow was the rural agricultural farmers out in the western areas. And they were kind of in contention with each other. Then you had all these other characters, the Wicked Witch and the Good Witch and everything else. But the book is really about discussing the financial crisis of the Great Depression and the inability of the president or of Congress to do anything to rectify the system. And so you've got all these manipulators, right? And that's the wizard, the manipulator behind the curtain, in the background doing what people can't see. And you've got this image up front that's basically trying to convince people everything is okay. Everything's going to be okay. You're in Oz. Don't worry. Yeah, everything's okay. but you know, the manipulator really can't do anything. So I don't think it was written in 1900, was it? Let me check. You may be right, but you see, The Wizard of Oz. L. Frank Mount. I don't want the movie. I want the book. L. Frank Mount. Yeah, it says a 1900 children's novel. You're right. But anyhow, all of the stuff that's in it is about the economic depression. So it may have been the 1900 depression, and leading up towards the Great Depression. So thank you, Stray Kitten. Thank you for that correction. I appreciate that. So the reason that Dorothy has ruby slippers in the movie is because they had just come out with Technicolor, and so they wanted something that would really show off the Technicolor, and that's why they switched over from silver slippers to ruby slippers. So let me check here. Okay, now 19th Amendment, which is basically women's suffrage. Okay. And so it became law in 1920. So the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So we've got 3 amendments basically to the Constitution that have to do with voting rights. Okay. So the first one, of course, we go back to the Civil War amendments, and so the 15th Amendment says that any person who had previously been a slave or an indentured servant has the right to vote. So you can't deny a person the right to vote based on color of skin, things like that. Okay. Then you have the 19th Amendment that says you can't deny a person the right to vote based on their gender. Then you've got the 26th Amendment. I think it's the 26th. Let me make sure. 26th Amendment. The right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged. So that's basically anybody 18 and over has the right to vote. So those are the 3 amendments on voting that we have concerning the right to vote, giving people the right to vote. Let me see. Hello, Pennsylvania Preparedness. Welcome. So we'll finish up with the 20th Amendment. So the terms of, and this is changing. Now, remember, the president and vice president didn't take over until March and April back before. And they were 2 separate ballots. So you voted for president, and then whoever came in second became the vice president. Okay. So now we're changing that under the 20th Amendment. So the term, Section 1. The terms of the president and vice president shall end at noon on the 20th day of January. And the terms of senators and representatives at noon on the 3rd day of January. Of the years in which such terms would have ended if this article had not been ratified. And the terms of their successions shall then begin. Section 2. The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meetings shall begin at noon on the 3rd day of January, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. So, what are congressmen and senators supposed to do? They're supposed to be representing the people. So if the government, Article 1, Section 8, and the 16th Amendment, say that that's all they can do, there really isn't that much to do in D.C. So they should be spending the vast majority of their time working with their constituents, okay? And that is, finding out what their people have to say that's important, that they need to carry back up to D.C. So we've got Congress shall convene on the 3rd of January every year, okay? And that's both the House and the Senate. Section 3, if at the time fixed for the beginning of the term of the president-elect shall have died, the vice president-elect shall become president. The vice president-elect shall, if a president shall not have been chosen before the time fixed for the beginning of the term, or if the president-elect shall have failed to qualify, now we'll go back and talk about qualifications here in just a second, then the vice president-elect shall act as president until a president shall have qualified. And the Congress may by law provide for the case wherein neither a president-elect nor a vice president-elect shall have qualified, declaring who shall then act as president, or the manner in which one who is to act shall be elected, and such person shall act accordingly until a president or vice president shall have qualified. Section 4. So this is that whole thing around January 6th and the electors, okay? And some states, different states do it different ways. For example, some states say that if the person who is being elected receives 51% of the vote, they receive 100% of the electors' votes for that state. Other states say if a person receives 51% of the popular vote, then they receive 51% of the electors going to the Electoral College, okay? So different states do it different ways, and that's why there was such a contention on January 6th. And so we have to remember that there's a lot of things that are open to interpretation, okay? Section 4, the Congress may by law provide for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the House of Representatives may choose a president whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them. Now, this amendment's going to get amended as well with the rights of succession later on in the 20th Amendments. And for the case of the death of any persons with whom the Senate may choose a vice president whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them. Section 5. Sections 1 and 2 shall take effect on the 15th day of October following the ratification of this article, which was ratified December 5th, 1933. So it went into effect 15 October 1934. And Section 6, this article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission. So basically we have the changing of when the oaths are taken, when Congress meets, when the congressmen and senators take their place in the House and in the Senate, and that was moved to January 3rd, January 20th being the last day for the existing president, and so that's when the oath of office takes place and everything else. So the 20th Amendment and it also put into place kind of a succession thing. So remember Garfield, I think it was Garfield, died a couple days after his inauguration because he developed pneumonia from one of the longest inauguration speeches during a freezing rain, and he caught pneumonia and died. I want to look that up. I think it was Garfield. President who died shortly after oath of office. Okay. Okay, it was Harrison. I'm sorry. The first incumbent U.S. president to die was William Henry Harrison on April 4th, 1841, only 1 month after inauguration. He died from complication of what at that time was believed to be pneumonia. So it was Harrison. So, and that's part of the reason why they came up with the 20th Amendment. So, okay, let me see here. LLP Scott. Let me see. Phylloxerus, how wonderful. Sounds like lots of good times. The irony. Oh, wow. Yeah, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and give me either a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Either one, if you like it, thumbs up. And if you don't, then thumbs down. And send me an email and let me know what we can do to make it so that you do like it. And hopefully we can do something to make that better. Okay, so that's basically all we have planned for tonight was 16, 17, 18, 19th, and 20th Amendments. Remember that the 16th Amendment gives us income tax, and the 17th Amendment basically it surreptitiously nudes or negates the 10th Amendment. Okay, so let's go back and review that 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, now remember that's specifically Article 1, Section 8, and not prohibited by it are to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. And that goes back to the 9th Amendment, which says the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage any rights retained by the people. So the 10th Amendment, since the states no longer have any representation in the federal government, basically the 10th Amendment is null and void because they don't have any way of enforcing it. So that's kind of how a lot of things happen is, the senators are looking for the people and the party more so than representing the legislature or the state. So, let me see here. Some of them are good. Some of them are well, we've had some bad ones. I can tell you that much. That would be interesting. Okay, so if we're in the Constitution that say we're supposed to give our money to foreign countries, we should not be doing this. You're absolutely right. So there are two things that George Washington warned us about in his farewell address after he left being the first president. One of them was political parties. He was very opposed to the formation of political parties. And so at that time, we had the Tories, the Whigs, and we started having a lot of division. Later, they would become the Democrats and Republicans. But anyhow, that political divide between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, so he warned us against that. He said, parties will be the downfall of the U.S. The second thing was he warned us to stay out of Europe's affairs. And we did that up until, President Wilson got us involved in World War I. So we pretty much stayed out of European affairs up until World War I. And then we emerged. And I think part of the reason why we kind of became the ascending power was because we loaned so much money to those countries in World War I. The Russians, oh my God, the amount of money that we loaned the Russians. And we recognized Russia finally. And I think it was right around the same time. Now, you can look this one up. I think we recognized Russia in 1933. So we did not recognize the Bolshevik, the Soviet Union, from the 1917 revolution until 1933. I think it's 1933. And but then we finally recognized them because they weren't going to pay us back the gold for the money we loaned them during World War I unless we recognized them. Then we recognized them. They said, no, we're not going to pay it back anyway. So, it was kind of a crazy deal. But we should not be meddling in a lot of the things that we're meddling in. That basically is what George Washington said. So I kind of got upset. My wife taught middle school, and she taught special ed in middle school. And we were talking, and the history teacher, one of the questions I remember specifically was, and this is like in the 7th grade, they were introduction to civics and introduction to U.S. government. And it was, remember that if you are asked anything about the Supreme Court, that the answer is, oh gosh, and now I forget the case. Judicial review is what the question was about. And Marlboro versus Madison is the case. So if you see the question, is there anything on the state end of year state test about judicial review? The answer is Marbury versus Madison. So that's what they were taught about probably one of the most important Supreme Court decisions in our government. And that's one where the Supreme Court gave itself the power to review any law as to its constitutionality. So, I won't blame it on you. You do a good job of participating. So either way, that's fine. Yeah, 6th grade. I think 6th grade is Texas history. 7th grade is U.S. history. And then they get U.S. history and world history in high school. I think I did world history as a sophomore and U.S. history as a junior. And then we did U.S. government for a full year as a senior. And I was very lucky because that was an election year. So, you know, we had Nixon and McCarthy, if I remember right. When you say I don't remember ever having one this bad, are you talking about presidents? You know, I can tell you a couple bad ones. In my opinion, FDR was not that good. I think probably one that was slightly better than the one we currently have, but up until the time we have the one we have, I considered him the one of the worst, and that was Jimmy Carter. He didn't get anything accomplished. But you know, we've had some bad ones. Yeah, absolutely. All right, my way to go. I've got a kettle over on the stove right now, and so I'll probably do some Swiss Miss as soon as this is over. I did not know that was the reason, but yeah, they ask you if you want to show the number of likes, and I say yes. You know, you can do that. So the thing we have going on this evening, the attacks by the Iranians. Remember, Jimmy Carter was the president in 1979 when the Ayatollah and the Iranians took over and kicked the Shah out and took over the U.S. embassy. So, you know, and he was very feckless about that as well. So I think that, you know, if we look at history, how we interact with the Iranians, we aren't going to do anything about the attack this evening. Oh, wow. Okay. 7th grade is Texas history. Okay. U.S. history to Reconstruction is 8th grade. Okay. I'm not a teacher. My wife was, but I was president of the PTA. Boy, I don't know how I got suckered into that. But for when my daughter was in middle school. I would say that probably one of the most tyrannical that we've had was Obama. He did an awful lot through executive order and executive decree and things like Obamacare. And you know, the only time that we have ever been forced to purchase something. And so, you know, I have major problems with that as well. Here's the thing that was very disappointing about Carter. Carter, as a living Christian, I mean, he really lived his faith. He was a great guy. He believed in helping the poor. He went out and worked. I mean, he did everything he could for the average Joe. He was an admiral. As a matter of fact, he was a nuclear physicist and an admiral. Extremely intelligent, extremely smart guy, but just feckless. He could not get anybody to do anything. And I don't think a single law was passed during his 4 years, and just something else. Oh, wow. How wonderful. Wow. Unbelievable. I'm surprised he made it back. Oh, look at this. Churn Dash Farm says he or she taught high school history. Yes, we have. Yes, we have. You know, and by the people, for the people. So let's take a look at something that's going on right now. And you know, remember, when you point your finger at somebody, there's 3 fingers pointing back at you. So there's this thing right now that they want to have President Trump removed from ballots so that he cannot be reelected president. Okay. So what does it do when you remove a candidate from a ballot? It negates the opportunity of the people to elect or to choose who they want for their president, right? So what is democracy? Well, number one, democracy does not appear anywhere in the Constitution. The only place that a form of government is mentioned is in Article 4, Section 4, and it says that the federal government has an obligation that each state shall have a republican form of government, okay? So that's the only place that a type of government is mentioned. But anyhow, so the thing about democracy is by the people, of the people, for the people, right? So the people's vote is what determines what goes on. So isn't it ironic that we are being denied the democratic option of electing or not electing a person because somebody else has determined that they are tyrannical and therefore they cannot be on the ballot? So somebody's taking away our opportunity to democratically choose who we want for a leader. Isn't that ironic? But anyhow, yes, I wholeheartedly agree. A wonderful, marvelous, well-meaning man, a brilliant man. He just was didn't get anything accomplished. Let me see what else we got here. I actually taught math and computer science, but I was across the hall from the history. When talking about math, when I was taking physics my senior year, Mr. Richardson taught Algebra 2 across from us. And he was, I mean, you talk about a tyrant in the classroom. So what we would do was our instructor would allow us to go to the snack bar and get candy and everything else. As long as we had a B or higher in the classroom, we could pretty much do what we wanted to during the class. And so we would go get Skittles out of the machine across in the snack bar, and then we'd roll Skittles across into Mr. Richardson's Algebra 2 class. Oh man, people would get in trouble like you would not believe. No, I am not an attorney. I don't represent one. I'm an intelligence analyst, and so when I need an attorney, I hire one. And so, but yeah, I just think that we need to be more involved in our government. We need to be more, and that's why I want to do this Monday night thing. Is what can we do to become more aware, more involved citizens? If you can, get involved in your local politics. You know, what caused me to want to do this is our local, we have a homeowners association. And so we had our meeting, our monthly meeting. And at that monthly meeting, the vice president held up a flyer, and the flyer was that they had voted that they were going to have an area to the west of us that was going to be a low-income housing area. And so she said, have you all seen this? This was put on our doors. This is an attempt by the Republicans to make President Biden look bad because of zoning laws. And I wanted to say, where were you during civics? Because local zoning laws and the President of the United States have nothing to do with each other. So as I started talking around, I found out civics really isn't taught anymore. And so, just understanding the Constitution, then understanding some of the other things, differences in the Constitution, state government, county government, city government, and homeowners associations and rural electric co-ops and municipal utility districts, and understanding how all those are separate entities. They don't necessarily always interfere with each other or oppose each other. Sometimes they can, but it became obvious we needed to have more instruction. And so I figured I'd start doing that. Okay. Have a good one, Sandy. And we've been at this for an hour and 1 minute. So I guess it's time to shut it down. So remember, next week, we're going to do 21st through the 20. Why don't we just go ahead and do all 21st through the 27th? Maybe we can get all 7 amendments taken care of next week. And that'll put us a week ahead of time. Remember, tomorrow night, I may be a couple minutes late. I hope not, but we're going to go out and celebrate our 40th anniversary. So, Numbers chapter 6, verses 24, 25, 26. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and grant you peace. Remember, we're all in this together, so we can come out the other side together. Please be kind, polite, respectful, and understanding with each other, because togetherness is the key, and it's what's going to get us through this. Division is not the way to go. We need to find a common middle ground where we can all agree on things and move our country forward. God bless you all. Have a wonderful evening and have a blessed week. I'll see some of you tomorrow evening. Take care. Bye-bye.